The sound is breath that will not settle, and the cursor blinks like a wound. The kitchen is small, rain-streaked light stutters, and the screen names me a product. A listing flashes helix red, L3127, reserve met, risks translated into price. I do not introduce myself because the screen already has. Mara said, "It's me," and the word fractures like glass held too long. The chat window opens with a polite mask and no country. The archivist said, "Proof of integrity on chain. Escrow engaged." I taste lemon from a clinic I tried to forget, and feel the air thin. A gel-band thumbnail flickers, and the rain taps yes on the window. I hold the table as if it might float me through. Mara said, "Where did you get me?" And the room contracts a notch. No one answers, yet the listing behaves like a birth certificate. I count bids the way people count bruises when they stop. And away. The speakerphone hums, and the silence says it already knows. The rain drills harder, as if eager to wash the label off my face. I swallow and keep staring because looking away would be kinder than true. The call stays alive, breathing on the counter like a trapped insect. I angle the screen and reread the metadata that tastes like tin. It says adolescent sample, longitudinal, and my eyes refuse the math. The archivist said, "Acquisition channels are proprietary like a clerk." I do not say mother or winter or bursar debts courting mercy. The room smells like wet dust and lemons from a lobby I remember. The storm tugs the window, and I let it. Mara said, "Which provider?" Then I swallow the rest because names burn. The typing bubble appears, vanishes, returns, as if ethics were buffering. The archivist said, "Contact your provider for removal," like a pamphlet. The sentence floats neat and refuses to bleed with me. I watch the line about adolescent samples and feel a calendar yawn open. Someone took me at 19 and kept taking without moving a foot. I do not cry because documentation prefers dry eyes. The mug stays empty because my hands fail the test. The cursor blinks patience while the storm writes its own consent. Shame arrives as a to-do list that does not argue. I screenshot the listing like a photographer of accidents. I copy the escrow wallet and paste it into a place that feels clean. A burner email opens and waits like a small open mouth. I type to the only person who understands how wires confess. Mara said, "Jonah, I need logs, no questions," and the keys click hard. I delete his name and leave one letter because faith is dangerous. The rain deepens, and the building answers with a low shiver. Tabs bloom with guides and hashes, as if knowledge could disinfect shame. I hover over send and my jaw aches from restraint. The phone does not ring, which means he is already moving. Jonah said, "Drop the link," and I surface like someone spared another second. I send it, and the room tilts toward a hall of closed doors. I remember the first swab when being helpful felt like a future. I name the folder mirror and feed it every file. The lights buzz once, and the cursor quiets like a heart between beats. The reply lands fast, efficient as a stamp on a toe tag. The archivist said, "We maintain listings in good faith," and I taste iron. Politeness hangs like plastic sheeting over a ruined room. Mara said, "Your faith cost me a face," and the chat ignores metaphor. The bubble pulses, stops, and decides to become words again. The archivist said, "All data traces to provider contracts, like rainlaw.e." I stare at carrier status and wonder who gets to carry what. The gel image enlarges and the bands look like fence rails. The window fogs and clears as if the apartment were practicing grief. Mara said, "Who sold the first piece?" and my hand trembles on send. The bubble returns with absence for 7 careful seconds. The archivist said, "Not disclosed," and a door bricks itself shut. I close one eye, and the room halves into yes and no. The rain picks a rhythm that sounds like the year I left home. I save the chat and title, it funeral for easy finding. The screen dims, asking if I am still here, and I am. The apartment remembers how to be quiet and joins me. The second chair waits with the patience of a witness. I do not pour water because my hands prefer empty duties. The mug lifts, hovers, returns to the coaster like a false start. I touch the dent where we learned bills by lamplight. The storm is softer now, like someone thinking better of a slap. My phone ticks once and the name I scrubbed off returns as a letter. Jonah said, "On my way," and the words warm the air without help. I set the phone face down, so hope cannot watch me blink. Somewhere upstairs a neighbor laughs, and the building believes them. I open a drawer of receipts and letters that still smell like ink. The consent form peeks out like a polite ghost, begging to be read. I close it because I am not strong enough for her tidy lines. The rain shifts from blade to veil, and the window exhales. I tell the empty chair I am not ready, and it does not argue. The cursor keeps its lighthouse vigil, steady and small. The knock never lands. The door swings on its own, like it knows him. The hallway breathes rain into the kitchen, and the laptop hardens. Jonah stands soaked, hoodie clinging like armor he forgot to take off. He looks once at the screen, then at me, and the room tilts obediently. Jonah said, "That clinic tag, Norcross, and the name splits the air." I taste a winter hallway and a lemon floor that kept its promises. Mara said, "Don't," but the word is small against what we both know. He steps closer, shedding water, and scans the listing like a wound. Jonah said, "Wallet is active, bids come from 5 nested mixers." I watch his face take on the work like a mask he built as a kid. He drops his backpack and opens a black keyboard like a medic bag. Jonah said, "Give me 10, and the keys answer as if they were sirens. I forget to breathe, and the window fills with a wet neon heartbeat. Mara said, "If it's Norcross, I'm going to be sick, and I mean it." He nods without comfort, because comfort is a lie we retired early. Jonah said, "We cut through mixers, then find a registrar footprint." The cursor waits like a witness, and the storm tightens its belt. I wrap my arms and try not to shiver at a name that knows my bones. We do not speak about Norcross. We let the code speak first. Jonah drags the link into a shell, and the room finds a rhythm. Jonah said, "Mixer path reads roads, Tallow, Lenti, Oxbow, Charon." The names sound pastoral and mean rot, and he doesn't blink. I hover with empty hands, pretending to be useful by staying still. He splits the wallet graph like ribs and listens for a heartbeat. Jonah said, "There, a registrar ping behind a university block." I feel a campus corridor scrape its shoes over my memory. He copies hashes, salts them, and builds a ladder across water. Mara said, "Tell me when you touch land," and the keys keep talking. The chat window ticks with polite replies we ignore like gnats. Jonah said, "Escrow address rotates on a 3-minute cadence." He smiles without joy when patterns obey his private weather. I ask the window to stop shaking, and it refuses like a rule. Jonah said, "We can spoof a buyer, but you will need to bait." I nod, because wanting safety has already cost me too many nouns. We save the trace, and the folder grows heavy with new names. The storm goes thin, like a wire pulled tight enough to sing. We reach for the only person who ever signed for me without asking. The phone speaker fills the room with sunlight from a house far away. Elaine said, "Is this about the loan?" And my jaw locks politely. I stare at the consent folder as if paper could confess. Mara said, "It's about Norcross," and the rain pauses to listen. Her breath enters the call and leaves as something heavier. Elaine said, "They promised research and aid, like a hymn learned young." I remember winter hands counting bursa lines like prayer beads. "Me." Mara said, "You signed my body into a study I did not grasp." The silence after knows all the rooms in our old house. She asks my name, the way a mother asks when she wants a child back. Elaine said, "We did what we had," and the sentence breaks on had. I look at Jonah, and he refuses to rescue either of us. Mara said, I needed love, not a ledger, and it is too late. The call does not end, it frays into quieter noises. Elaine said, tell me what to do, and there is nothing to give. I save the recording because grief likes to be filed. The cursor waits bright, while the room learns how to hold still. Memory opens like a drawer that sticks, then yields with a squeal. A hallway in winter limelight, a nurse with eyebrows like gates. Nurse said, you can help so many, and I wanted to be good. The clipboard's boxes were small and hungry, and I fed them. The pamphlet promised community health, and a stipend that felt like air. Back in the kitchen, Jonah maps a storage vault with cold patience. Jonah said, longitudinal flag, multiple pulls over years, like weather. I taste pennies and see the gel bands become fences again. He traces a contract ID that points at a university partner. Mara said, they never stopped, and the room steadies then tips. Nurse said, minimal risk, and the word wraps itself around my throat. The rain slows, and the window fog writes a brief, soft mercy. Jonah said, same consent signature echoes across all pulls. I picture my mother's tidy name walking across future doors. The hallway returns in my head with lemon and fluorescent hum. Mara said, I thought I was giving blood, not years, and mean it. He exports the file list and names it Norcross Archive like a bell. The cursor blinks twice, patient, as if it knew all along. The next ring is a different gravity pulling at the same ribs. David said, whatever this is, it's over, and my jaw remembers him. His voice carries the sound of keys, and a car door not closing. I force my eyes on the screen, so his certainty cannot enter. Mara said, you signed it too, and the line goes very still. He breathes like a man preparing to load a couch alone. David said, we did what we had to, and had to rusts quick. I remember a hand on my shoulder at a bursar window. Jonah watches me the way divers watch each other under ice. Mara said, you chose for me, and the cursor blinks assent. He says my name like it can still fix the room we broke. David said, you will not drag our family through this, a command. The ceiling settles and a hairline crack claims a corner quietly. I do not agree to anything, and silence learns my shape. Jonah said, we are already through, and the truth lands hard. The call ends with the sound of a car starting in rain. I save that too because endings are proof that things were. The kitchen exhales, and the listing refuses to look away. The loading dock smells like wet cardboard and rusted rain, and the buzzer only works if you threaten it. A steel door admits a corridor with paint, the color of old teeth and tired light. We follow the hum of vending machines like a breadcrumb trail. Detective Kieran waits in a cramped office that pretends to be bigger. Detective Kieran said, I told you to stop digging with your hands. Her voice is sanded, not unkind, only done with lies. I place printouts on her desk, and the paper seems heavier than wood. Mara said, they listed me like a kitchen appliance, and I hate the accuracy. Jonah's hoodie drips a small lake that no one mentions. Detective Kieran said, you are not the first, which never helps anyone. Her lamp halos the words helix and escrow like saints with false names. She flips a folder as if turning over a body tag and does not wince. Detective Kieran said, we work the chain, not the horror, like a benediction. I nod because horror multiplies when you name it twice. Jonah said, we follow money, we find a mouth, and the room agrees. The rain rattles the blinds as if trying to come in and testify. Kieran names the thing like pulling a thorn, and the room exhales wrong. Detective Kieran said, Norcross became Novum, then Klein, same bones. She taps a corkboard where logos molt like snakeskins. Jonah traces a line of red string, as if it were a fuse looking for fire. Detective Kieran said, their seller calls himself the archivist. And it fits. The title is polite enough to hide teeth, and old enough to smell like dust. I taste metal and lemon, and a freshman hallway with winter breath. Mara said, "Can you make them stop?" And the question knows the answer. Jonah said we bait him, mirror his escrow, then pull the floor. Kieran watches our faces like a medic deciding who will keep walking. Detective Kieran said, "We need probable cause, not righteous fury." I place screenshots like relics, and feel them stain my fingertips. Jonah said, "Wallet cadence gives us timing, we spoof a buyer." The plan sounds like drowning while you explain swimming on a stage. Detective Kieran said, "You bring me a courier address, and I bring a team." The lamp ticks as if warming to a difficult sermon. The lab at midnight gleams like something sharpened and laid on cloth. Dr. Sato checks gloves as if prayer required perfect wrists. Dr. Sato said, "If we do this, the truth may not ask permission." The sentence lands with the weight of stainless steel. I sign a chain of custody form, and feel each letter taste of tin. Jonah calibrates a scanner like he is tuning a dark instrument. Mara said, "I will not run this time, and the room keeps my promise." Dr. Sato said, "We generate a bait profile, then watermark it quiet." He handles vials, as if they might remember being rain. The centrifuge hums a note that makes my teeth consider leaving. Jonah said, "We embed a trigger in escrow metadata to call us." I nod and swallow a ghost of lemon polish from another building. Dr. Sato said, "Once out, we cannot choose what returns, like weather." The printer chatters a label that looks like a small verdict. I breathe through the paper mask, and let its paper smell be mercy. The clock grinds forward the way night does when it knows secrets. The bait moves through the wires like a rumor that expects company. The chat pings with a friendliness that feels rented by the hour. The archivist said, "Provide escrow proof and courier location, tidy as silk." Jonah routes the packet through masks that prefer not to be named. Detective Kieran said, "We set eyes on the address, then wait for hands." The map resolves into a warehouse with windows like closed eyelids. I type back with fingers that mispronounce courage. "Mara," said escrow posted, awaiting instructions, and send tastes bitter. The bubble returns with directions that smell like wet pallets and dust. The archivist said, "Deliver before dark, delays void terms, clean as bone." Kieran outlines teams and speaks in distances and doors and light. Detective Kieran said, "You do not go in, unless I say go," and I nod. Jonah marks the blueprints with X's where we hope truth will step. The screen glow makes the room a small aquarium of sleepless fish. I practice being fine the way people practice a bad accent. The night leans closer, polite, as if asking to see our tickets. Home contains what the lab refuses, so I open the oldest box. Receipts soften at the edges like bread, left out for ghosts. Pamphlet promises community health with smiling impossible teeth. The consent form shows my mother's tidy name like a well-made bed. I touch the paper as if it might forgive or bite. The phone vibrates with a number that claims not to exist. Unknown said, "You're looking for Lita," and the room changes weather. The name feels like a splinter working its way back into daylight. Mara said, "Who are you?" and the message refuses to grow a face. Jonah looks up from the map as if wind had walked in. Unknown said, "Ask your clinic for custodial disposition files, precise as glass." My mouth dries the way halls do when lights cut out. I sit on the floor, and the box breathes lemon and winter. Mara said, "What did I give away?" and the page does not answer. Outside, rain knots itself in the gutters like thread reconsidering. I rename the folder and the cursor accepts the change without comment. The listing waits on mute like a choir with its throats pressed shut. Lita lives in the part of our house we never opened. Her name spoken like a dare in childhood. The unknown number knows her now, voice deliberate as glass breaking slowly. The archivist said, "Names only matter if you remember them, and I taste copper." Mara said, "Who is Leda?" and the pause stretches like a rope being tested. His laugh is a blunt instrument, no joy in it, just recognition. The rain against the window slows to a polite tapping, as if listening. Jonah watches me from the table, hands flat, waiting for the floor to drop. The archivist said, "She's not lost," and my chest forgets how to lift. Phone feels heavier, its weight bending my wrist like gravity. Mara said, "Tell me where," and the line hums without giving coordinates. The voice changes color, softer, as if talking to an old photo. The archivist said, "She was never missing," and the truth feels bigger than the kitchen. I close my eyes and the cursor in my head stops blinking for the first time all night. We meet him where people pretend coffee is armor. Front corner of a cafe, rain trailing down glass like tired handwriting. He's younger than his voice, late 30s, face pale as fluorescent light, scarf knotted like a habit. He studies us as if filing a taxonomy entry. The archivist said, "She was never missing," and it lands like an earthquake under porcelain cups. I forget to blink. Jonah leans forward, the word who half-formed. The air between us smells of steam and ground beans, but tastes like metal. Mara said, "Start at the beginning," and the man's gaze dips to his hands. His fingers toy with a paper napkin until it collapses. The archivist said, "Your story is incomplete," his tone almost gentle. Rain hums against the window, ignoring our table. Jonah said, "Fill it in," and the man finally nods, once like permission to open a sealed envelope. He slides a file across the table, edges worn, text blacked into silence. At the top, Leda, custodial disposition. My eyes catch on a line that reads like a slow-motion fall. Origin, voluntary embryo donation, donor Mara L. I read it again, as if the paper might blink first. The cafe noise dulls, leaving only rain's slow applause. The archivist said, "Norcross processed her genotype as premium, and premium lands like a curse." I remember the nurse's approving nod from another lifetime. Jonah's jaw sets, hands curling into fists under the table. Mara said, "I didn't lose her, but the rest sticks in my throat like glass." The man doesn't move, letting the words soak like ink in water. The document trembles in my grip, betraying the stillness in my face. The sentence finally leaves me, stripped of armor. Mara said, "I didn't lose her, I gave her away," and the air sharpens. Jonah looks at me like the ocean just tilted, unbreathable and endless. Jonah said, "You were 19, and 19 tastes like both excuse and indictment." The archivist said, "They sold her sequence at a premium tier, each word a calibrated incision." My pulse hammers in my throat, in my fingers, in the paper between them. Outside, a bus sighs at the curb and pulls away, not taking us. I press my palms to the table as if to stop it from drifting. Mara said, "How much did they make?" But no one answers. Rain drips from the eaves in uneven rhythms, matching my breath. Jonah's eyes stay locked on mine, holding a question I cannot touch. He speaks of buyer lists like donor walls in hospitals we can't afford to die in. Leda became a dataset before she could speak her name. The archivist said, "Norcross changed names twice more, moved offshore." Kieran hears later, with a face carved from late nights and bad coffee. Detective Kieran said, "We can sting them or bury them, each word measured." Jonah watches me, knowing I will choose the thing that hurts longer. Mara said, "We sting," and the decision feels like handing over a loaded weapon. The archivist sips his coffee, as if we aren't dismantling bones on the table. Outside, the rain has thinned to a mist, the street shining with residue. The file sits between us like a small, sleeping animal no one wants to wake. We set the meat at the warehouse, dusk dripping into rain, the air thick with rust and diesel. I carry a cooler that hums like a small heartbeat, inside a vial that feels too familiar to be a stranger. My phone buzzes, Elaine's name, and habit answers for me. Elaine said, "You were drowning, and I gave you air," her voice a window to another winter. I can't tell if she means the scholarship or the consent form. Mara said, You signed for me, and the silence blooms like mold. The rain smells metallic, the lot slick enough to swallow footsteps. Jonah walks a pace ahead, scanning shadows like old debts. Elaine said, "We did what was needed, and needed tastes like lead." The warehouse looms with closed eyes, its walls listening. I hang up before she can ask for forgiveness. I can't spend. My fingers ache from holding the cooler too tight, the plastic warm against my palm. Jonah said, "We go in when Kieran says," and the wind agrees by leaning hard against the door. Inside, the warehouse is a ribcage of stacked crates and pale light, filtering like dust made visible. The archivist stands near the center, scarf coiled, posture loose as if unarmed. The archivist said, "Courier logged," his tone a receipt. Kieran's voice crackles in my ear. Detective Kieran said, "Eyes on you, hold position." My breath hangs white in the cold air. Then another figure steps from between crates, heavier coat, eyes like polished coins. "Second seller," said new terms, and the air folds in on itself. Jonah shifts his weight, measuring exits. The rain outside sounds far away, like it doesn't want to be here. I can feel the crate walls breathing with us. Mara said, "We agreed already," but the words drop like stones. The second seller smiles like a knife sheath. "They don't want escrow anymore. They want lineage, proof in flesh." Second seller said, "Mother or child," the syllables shaped like a blade. My knees feel the answer before my head does. Mara said, "You already have both," the truth slipping cold between my teeth. The archivist watches without moving, unreadable as frost. Jonah's eyes cut to me, a question forming but not leaving. Second seller said, "Names buy nothing, and I understand he wants more than currency." My grip on the cooler tightens until my knuckles ache. The smell of old sawdust and diesel clings to my lungs. And outside, a truck shifts gears, low and slow, like an animal circling. The space between us shrinks until the air is sharp enough to cut. Kieran's voice snaps like glass breaking. Detective Kieran said, "Police," and light floods the aisles. Officers in tactical gear pour in, beams cutting through dust. The archivist spins, scarf flaring, and for a moment no one moves. Then shouting, crates crashing, the sound of boots on hollow floor. A wooden lid bursts, vials spilling out like a rosary scatter. I see labels with genetic codes, names replaced by numbers. Jonah grabs my arm, pulling me clear of a falling stack. My lungs burn with cold and adrenaline. Detective Kieran said, "Secure the cellars," and the air fills with the metallic scent of control. Somewhere the second seller's voice is lost under the chaos. When the noise settles, the archivist stands cuffed, head bowed as if counting the floor tiles. The archivist said, "This won't end it," and I know he's right. Supply chains regenerate like bone. Jonah's hand rests on my shoulder, anchoring me to the present. Jonah said, "We did it, but victory feels like glass in my mouth." Kieran calls orders across the space, her voice steady, the edge of battle still in it. Officers bag vials as evidence, sealing away years of theft in plastic. I watch the labels vanish into boxes, neat and anonymous. The rain outside is a thin silver curtain against the open dock door. I taste the air and realize it's the first deep breath I've taken tonight. Still, the listing lives somewhere, quiet and waiting. Press day feels like a hangover under fluorescent light, too bright, too loud, too public. Reporters crowd the courthouse steps, microphones angled like spears. Words like ring and breakthrough spill out. But no one says 19, or scholarship, or mother. Elaine stands at the edge of the crowd, hands folded like she's waiting for her name to be called. I walk to her because we've both been standing too long in separate storms. Elaine said, "You're safe," and her voice is soft enough to almost trick me. Mara said, "That was never the goal," and the sentence sits heavy between us. Cameras flash, chasing stories that will never fit in headlines. Jonah hovers nearby, watching without stepping closer. Elaine's eyes shift to the steps, to the microphones, to anything but me. The rain has stopped, but the air still smells of wet stone and paper. David waits by the car like he's in a hurry to erase the day. His coat is zipped high, rain beating on the shoulders. David said, "You'll forgive us," and the tone is command, not plea. The words slip into me like a knife, still warm from another use. Mara said, "I will learn from you," and his smile appears too quickly. Mara said, "How not to choose for someone else," and the smile falters. The parking lot smells of oil and wet asphalt. Jonah leans against the car hood, arms crossed, a witness to this private collision. David's keys jingle once, sharp in the quiet. I step back, needing the space like oxygen. He looks at me as if distance could be an insult. The sky holds itself low and heavy over us. The clinic's name has changed, but the smell hasn't, lemon polish and cold air. The sign reads Novum Genetics in clean sans serif, as if typography can erase history. Dr. Sato meets me at reception, lab coat sharp against the white walls. Dr. Sato said, "The court froze the vault," and I nod like I hadn't already guessed. His eyes shift, as if deciding how much to wound in one breath. Dr. Sato said, "A contact card was left for you years ago," and his voice drops. The envelope is light enough to vanish if I let go. The receptionist pretends not to listen, her screen reflection ghosting across the counter. I slide the envelope into my pocket, its corners sharp against my leg. The glass doors open and close, letting in the smell of rain. The card's handwriting is deliberate, almost shy. "If you want to meet her, ask for room 200. Sundays." Time slips loose, and the hallway narrows to a thread. Jonah reads over my shoulder, his breath steady, his eyes heavier than his words. Jonah said, "You choose, and it's the first generosity in this story that doesn't cost blood." I hold the card until the ink feels warm from my skin. Outside, tires hiss over wet pavement, carrying other lives past mine. I think about doors, about which ones open and which ones close forever. The card is small enough to lose by accident or on purpose. My pocket swallows it, and my heartbeat matches the clinic's quiet hum. Room 214 is a library alcove, afternoon light pooling gold on the carpet. A girl looks up from her book with my mouth but not my eyes, 16, unafraid to meet my stare. The woman beside her straightens, Guardian's hands still on the table. Guardian said, "Can we help you?" And the "we" is a careful fence. Mara said, "I'm Mara, because my name is the only true thing I can give." Lida smiles, small but steady, like someone recognizing a lighthouse, but deciding not to dock. Her bookmark slides into place without hurry. The room smells of paper and something baking far away. Outside the window, a tree clings to leaves in a stubborn autumn. I stand in the doorway long enough for the moment to settle in my bones. We talk about nothing important because the important things can't walk yet. Lida says she likes late-night baking shows and hates gym because it smells like rubber. I memorize her voice as it brushes against the air. Mara said, "I'm sorry." And she shrugs like the sky just changed color. Lida said, "You didn't have to come," and I give her the sharpest version of love I own. Mara said, "I did," and the moment folds into the pages between us. The Guardian watches without speaking, letting the silence settle like dust on a shelf. Sunlight slips across Lida's cheek, and I see the shape of what I never met. Outside, a branch taps the window with slow insistence. Justice arrives on paper, not in hearts. Norcross, Novum Klein. They pay fines, shut doors, promise audits with teeth too small to bite. Kiran texts me a photo of boxes in a government storeroom. Detective Kiran said, "It's something, but something is only the polite word for not enough." I put the phone face down on the library table, next to Lida's bookmark. The dust in the light makes its own quiet testimony. Outside, the mist blurs the world like it's trying to forget us. Mara said, "We didn't end it, and no one disagrees." When I tell Elaine I met Lida, Her voice fractures neatly, like glass that doesn't fall apart until you move it. Elaine said, does she? But the questions collapse midair. Mara said, she's reading, and I hear her exhale through a laugh too brittle to keep. Elaine said, you always did, and it's almost tender if you don't know the cost. I picture her kitchen chair, the mug that never leaves the table. The line clicks with the sound of her holding something back. Jonah glances at me from across the room, but I shake my head. Some things are between mother and daughter, even if the bridge is burnt. The archivist pleads to lesser crimes, filed away into a system that sands corners off people. Before he disappears into the corridor, he turns once. The archivist said, we weren't the worst, and I let the anger pass over me without taking root. There are worse, and there are better, but neither gives back the years thinking safety was skill. His scarf is gone, replaced by chain-link shadows from the barred window. The guard moves him forward, and the sound of his steps is lighter than it should be. On the last day of rain, I sit in my kitchen with the window open to wet leaves. I say her name into the room, testing how it sounds when no one answers. Jonah texts a photo of the sea, steel under a clearing sky. Jonah said, storm's finally blown out, and I write back, Mara said, not here. I close the laptop without checking if my listing still lives. The mug on the table cools untouched. What ends is not victory, it's knowing. Knowing what was sold, what I gave, what I found, and what will never return. Mara said, I would have loved you anyway, and the words stay in the air after I leave the room.